just over a week after the Tartar Steel chess tournament finished in Vacanze, the next elite chess tournament has begun. The Grenke Classic 2015 started today in Baden Baden in southwest Germany. And 3 of the players from Vacanze are actually playing in this 8-player round-robin tournament. We have Magnus Carlsen, Fabiano Caruana and Levon Aronian. That's a big 3. And they're joined by Vishwanathan Anand, well, also a very worthy competitor. Then there's Arkady Naidic, who's the German #1. He actually defeated Magnus Carlsen in the Olympiad in the summer. Etienne Bacrot, who's the French #2. Michael Adams, he's the English #1. And David Baramidze, who's a very strong German grandmaster. And it's the game between Etienne Bacrot and David Baramidze that I'd like to start with. It's one of these incredibly sharp anti-Grunfeld systems where white played 3f3. And this opening is so theoretical. It's been seen in many games by the top players. This position is so incredibly complicated, and I'm sure hours and hours have been invested by the players in opening preparation, and of course not just human preparation but using computers as well. So let's take a look at the position. We join the game after 14 moves, so Bacrot with white, and he has this beautiful pawn chain here, which obviously shuts out black's pieces to a certain extent. I mean, in a sense, it's a classic Grunfeld position where black needs to hit out at its centre. But you'll notice with kings castled on opposite wings, this already makes life very interesting because you can see that black's pieces, in particular that bishop on g7, and also these knights here, could well start to hassle white's king. But, of course, white has his own ideas about attacking, and well, here Bacrot played h4. I should just note that in the Norway chess tournament of 2014, Carlsen played bishop h6 against Caruana, but actually after this he really didn't get much advantage from the opening. Caruana played the game extremely well. I mean, it ended in a draw, but yeah, Caruana was fine. h4 looks like a very natural move. Now, in order to meet this very straightforward attacking plan of opening the h-file, of course black has to challenge in the centre, so e6 looks like a good idea. And of course, if black can exchange here and bring this light squared bishop into play on f5, then that really starts to look dangerous for white's king. Bishop f4 from white, perhaps not the first move you'd think of. Bacrot played this move after precisely 46 seconds, so I think we can be absolutely certain that this is computer preparation, and it has actually been seen before. There was a game between Rodstein and Bock from Biel 2012, so it's very theoretical, where black played queen e7 to defend that pawn. Obviously the threat is to play bishop takes pawn to win material. Queen e7 looks like the most natural move on the board, but white certainly got the better position after this move, and that virtually forces black to block that diagonal of the bishop. And after this, well, white had this nice knight on d5 and some attack on the king's side. White was certainly better there, although black held the draw. Well, other moves. Black could also play e5, but this rather falls into white's hands because that blocks this bishop. There's less pressure on the pawn on d5, and white can still attack on the king's side. So, well, as I said, I think queen e7 is somehow a very natural move, even though it probably gives white the advantage. But Baramidze played rook d7 here, which looks incredibly ugly, I have to say. It blocks the bishop on c8, which therefore hinders black's entire queenside development. It looks dreadful, but as soon as I put this position into my computer, then my computer actually says that rook d7 is the best move in the position. There you are. This is definitely preparation, because there's no way that a human would pick this move, rook d7. As I said, queen e7 looks like the most natural move to me. So it was now Bacrot's turn to think, and after 13.5 minutes he came up with bishop h6, which looks, well, very normal to me, because this is potentially a very powerful bishop and a strong defender, so white tries to knock it out. And now Baramidze thought for 28.5 minutes, which tells me that his preparation is at an end, and he exchanged off and then played queen f8. I think this is a very human way to play by black, because obviously, you know, you want to try and drive away this queen from its strong attacking position. Bacrot thought for about 10 minutes and exchanged queens. I think this is a very good decision, even though you might say, oh well, the attack's not as strong. In fact, white's attack still continues in this position, and black, basically it continues because black is so retarded with his development on the queen side, and these knights are a long way from reality. So white at the moment is able to play on the king side, and black at the moment has no real counter-attack. So Baramidze exchanged on d5, this looks reasonable, and played the knight back into, well, a strong position actually on c4, but still a long way from the king side. So Bacrot exchanged on g6. Now, to my eyes, recapturing the h-pawn looks like the best move to me. Now, of course, this involves very concrete calculation. Of course, it's dangerous to open up the h-file, but you know, it actually gives black's king more cover when the pawn on f7 protects e6, for example. But instead, Baramidze recaptured with the f pawn, and the problem is with this that it leaves the e6 square open and vulnerable, and the king vulnerable to perhaps attacks on the f file. So Bacrot exchanged off on c4. This was recaptured, and then played knight h3. So white's moves are very easy here. So this knight ready to leap into the attack via f4 or g5. Rook e7, I think that's a necessary move. Obviously, black needs to develop the bishop on c8. Knight g5. So this is starting to look quite critical. There's an attack on h7. If king g8, well, then there's a really nice idea for white. d6 gives away the pawn but frees the d5 square for the knight, and this is really, really dangerous. This knight is so powerful, looking all over the place, and h7 is about to cave in. So Baramidze played h5, and now white continued with the attack. g4, strong move, and you know, black is reeling here. Very difficult position for black to play. I mean, maybe king g7 is best, just to give up a pawn, but instead Baramidze exchanged or took the pawn on g4. Well, let me show you what happened in the game. Bacrot played, after 17 minutes thought, knight e4. It's a complex position, and this looks incredibly strong. Sending another knight in and ready to drive forward with the rook. Baramidze took on f3. Good move. White checked on h8, king g7. And now here, I suspect that Bacrot had intended rook h1, which looks crushing, threatening rook h7 mate. But here black has a beautiful defence. Knight d2 check. Obviously, white can't allow this knight to be taken, so Knight takes d2, and now bishop f5 check. Saves. So after this, rook takes h8. A very nice discovered attack, and, well, black is even winning this position. So after king g7, Bacrot had to just check. And check again. And check again, and a draw was agreed. They repeated the position. Let me just go back to this position after g4, where black took on g4. In fact, the best move is simply to recapture, and this keeps black bottled in for a move. Okay, first of all, we should say this pawn on g4 can't be captured because rook h8 check now wins the rook in the corner. So let's say black plays king g8 to stop rook h8. And now a really cool move, rook h4. Two ideas. One, simply defending the pawn on g4, so that stops this bishop actually coming into play, or coming into play on a useful square. And now there is no sensible defense to just doubling on the h file. I mean, basically white just has this rolling initiative, and black really can't do much about it. Let's just show the main ideas. Keep checking the king. The king has to keep hold of that rook. Let's give another check. I mean, there are different variations here. Black can play in other ways, but this just gives you the idea of what white's about. And now a threat of mate here. Horrible. So let's say black exchanges with rook e8, and now a check. So the king goes back, another check. Basically, the rook on a8, it just plays no part in the game. And here, well, the material is still level, but I mean, this is obviously a winning position for white. This pawn will fall soon. Perhaps the knight can come in. I mean, this pawn, all of white's pieces look fantastic. White must be winning this position. So, a pity for Bacrot that he missed this very nice way to play. But as I said, I suspect he overlooked this very neat tactical defence of Baramidze's. So that game was drawn. In fact, all four games were drawn. Aronian and Carlsen had a very long game, but neither player could get the advantage. But although both tried very hard, Caruana and Anand had a fairly quiet draw, and Michael Adams and Arkady Naidic also drew fairly long game. So there are going to be 7 rounds, fairly short tournament. Play begins at 3 p.m. Central European time. I'm actually going to be commentating live on playchess.com tomorrow, so do join me then if you can.